maybe 20 minutes or so. So let's give him an ear and welcome him in. Thank you.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank Zim and Dustin. Dustin has been a wonderful mentor and a wonderful friend, and I just want to thank them for the opportunity. I started with my friend Rich. We started a literary collective called Sudden Dunama, and we started with just this idea of bringing writers together. And over time, we have 20 writers all over the world, and we have things have just really expanded. And but early on, my idea was that I was going to write these long-winded social critiques. And what I found was, as a writer, was that in the era of Instagram and Facebook, that there's a really short attention span. And so what I tried to do is I tried to change my approach. And so I decided that I found the work of a guy named S.K. Nicholas, who's a great English writer who has a tremendous following, and he writes short personal narratives. And so what I did was I decided to try my hand at dealing with issues, and doing so, stripping away my beat sensibilities, and trying to tackle an issue in 200 words or less. So that's how I got started, and that's where I really found an audience. And the first piece I'm going to read is called Father, and this is about the death of my father. It says, my father died. My father had a heart attack on a treadmill. He retired 2 weeks earlier. He lived to work. I lived a life of leisure, waiting tables and drinking. I pulled up to the house I shared with my friends, and my sister was in the front yard crying. She didn't have to say anything. For a week, we sat at the hospital, each in a different state of denial. I felt his finger that time. I was too old to be waiting tables without a wife or a home of my own. My life was a failure. Deep shame. I would talk to his co-workers or relatives and see the look in their faces as I told them what I did, or rather, what I didn't do. Eventually, it hit me. The shame and anguish of my life burst open as I realized that my father was already dead. He was a shell being kept alive by a machine. Shortly thereafter, he was pronounced dead. My mother, sister, and I ate at a cafeteria and had an upbeat conversation and laughed. It wasn't funny, but that is what people do sometimes in the face of tragedy. They laugh. Life wasn't funny for a long time after that, but like anything, eventually it got better. I don't think about it now. His ashen face, his blue lips, the nothingness. Only periodically, when I work too much, does it come to my mind. I think about being splayed out on the floor of a gym with strangers standing over me, pumping my chest wildly, breathing in my mouth, feeling the life slowly moving out of my body. Sometimes the irony of life is perplexing. Surely, and I think as a writer that writers have a tendency to carry or to always be thinking in normal situations about or thinking through the prism of being a writer. And right after that, I began to really find an audience, and people started contacting me, and the collective started growing. And I had a pool party. And from that, I have a second piece that's in that same vein as far as the short personal narrative, under 200 words, and it's called Pool Party. At some point towards the end of the evening, I get into the pool with my clothes on. Adults are on the patio talking in hushed tones about divorce and lost nights from the early 90s. Kids laugh and squeal, chasing each other through the house and around the pool. I hold my breath and float to the bottom, thinking of the mess I have to clean up. My life is falling apart. I gave my debit card for someone to get orange juice an hour ago. I ponder this and pull myself back up and repeat the process several times, meditating on the mess, the residue from ribs, beer bottles, mistakes, dead ends. Eventually, I sit on the edge of the pool and try to light my cigarette. My fingers are wet. The cigarette breaks. My effing luck. My son waves with a big smile. He is elated. I love you, Daddy. I lean over and hug his small, wet frame in the pool. My mind races. I have to get up. I have to get up. everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Eventually the house empties. I put the kids to bed, and darkness washes over me. There is no path. I have to start over tomorrow. I have to keep moving. So I started a second blog, and it was called Secret First Draft. And the whole point of the website is that every day I would write something, and I wouldn't edit it. I would just write it and throw it out there, and I didn't really promote it. So, I didn't really want. It was kind of a personal thing, and I just wanted to get some feedback with it and kind of help find my voice without having a lot of eyes on it, because it's obviously it was flawed work. And I wrote a piece called "Writing Isn't Going to Save Me" in a really dark time, and I had this tremendous outpouring of people from all over the world, and it really had a deep impact on me. And it was kind of an epiphany, and I really began to think about identity and who I was. And at that moment, I realized that I was planting the flag, and from that moment forward, I was going to be identified as a writer. And so it really kind of set up. The next night I wrote my clarion call, which is I am a writer, and I'm going to there's one word in the piece that I'm going to kind of change just because of the venue. It's called I am a writer. And this is a lot more in the beat style as opposed to the more concise 200-word piece that I wrote on it. I sit on the left hand of the gods and have a special dispensation to decode the secret universal rhythms, find patterns in the whispers that are inaudible to profane ears. My role is that of an observer, a quiet meditative force who has a holy charge to record the divine misery, the blind mysteries, the eke and turn everyday struggles of life, seen through the eyes of one who has divested himself of all worldly goods. Who are you? I am an effing writer. I am convicted, given over to the great purpose of wresting the truth away from the earth, buried under layers of silt and sediment, caught up in the swirl of the waters that lean to the great gravitational forces as the world mercilessly spins into the great unknown. The curse is the burden, the pulling back of the veil, looking into the languid eyes affixed on the gloss and glitter of shards of glass and bits of triviality, finding the gift in otherness, turning away from the doom, and finding a tribe of others who are beckoned to the same call. What do you do? I am a writer. Through the day, I am an undercover laborer engaged in the task of finding means to an end, looking out windows, staring at watches, waiting for life to begin. The toiling is for naught. It doesn't define me. I work for a living, but when I put my head on a pillow or look in the mirror, I know exactly what I am, touched by the hand of God, beholden to vision, and in collaboration with the silent minority, hiding out, going through the motions, learning and watching. I am anointed by almighty forces who plucked me out and spit me into the world with love in my heart, to stand in the shadows and pay the price for all the beauty and all the unhappiness in the world. And that piece was really a turning point for me, and that's when a lot of people reached out and started contacting me, and we went from having 5 writers to 10 writers, and everything just grew exponentially. And I think it's really important, and I think to make that transition. And today, I think of things differently than I did before, and and I think it's important as a writer to identify yourself as a writer, and to not identify yourself with what you do for a living, or any of these other things. So anyway, that piece was a big turning point. And as a side note, we're fixing to publish. We have 2 books that we're fixing to publish. They've just gone to proof, and then we're going to publish an anthology, and all the members of our group are given the opportunity to have their work published. So we've got about 5 or 6 novelists and published poets. So anyway, it's a really exciting time. I have a longer piece that is, of course, it's not as concise as the first 2, but I had a friend who died of a drug overdose, and he was my best friend since we were children. Our families were friends, and It was very difficult for me, and I took months and months and months, and I really couldn't write the piece, and I was able to write all this other stuff, but specifically talking about this death and this overdose, I couldn't do it. And so finally, on the anniversary of his death, I was very excited as I was able to, find the words, and it just came out of me, and it's called "Upon the Anniversary of Your Death," in memory of FGL. It says, I carried your books, Minkin, Nietzsche, and other misanthropic tomes, boxed up and sold by the pound, exercising all of your existential angst. The body still warm, I drove your mother in silence to the bookstore. Trivial tasks, your prized possessions discarded into the abyss. Torn covers and scribbled footnotes heralding a new aeon. 10 years removed, I'm still touched by unforgivable grief, remembering your deep laughter and explosive spark, the glass-smashing, room-clearing nihilism that left fragments of strangeness everywhere. I carried your grief, standing in your place, eulogizing your father and all the sadness in the world. I thought of your heartbreak, his rheumatoid, afflicted limbs, the never-ending horror of merciless suffering that drove you into nothingness as he wasted away. My shoes too tight, among strangers, swallowing my tongue, perspiring, hiding under the table, echoing, I can do this, I can do this, I have to do this for him. Tie crooked, I shake hands with your family. Thank you for standing in for him, they tell me with a wink and pat on the back. I bury my face in my hands afterwards in the car. I will never speak over the dead again. I carried your energy with me into adulthood, swimming in blue waters, experiencing the miracle of childbirth, thinking of your eternal resignation, methadone and Xanax as I passed out cigars. I can't help but think that a childbirth saved you, as I see the future in the helpless innocence of my fruit. I bought in, pushing carts down long aisles, groceries, comfort, pitter-patter of little feet, bank accounts, and Sundays strolling through antique stores. All the while I feel the specter of your life casting its pall over my experience. The sadness is at arm's length, though I know one day we will drink from the mead horn in the great hall. I carried your failure with me through tragedy, running in circles, ankles and knees aching, never stopping, jogging past your childhood home, finding God at the worst times, finding life in the place where you surrendered. She walked out and you died. I thought of this when mine left, rose from the dead, evolved, while you lingered in these shallow sleeps, haunting me as I struggled to overcome. Every day I pushed myself farther away from the place that you created. I was only an inch away, pushed to the shadows only to embrace the light. I did it because you could not. I did it for you. I carried your passion, your love of knowledge, finished a degree but never walked, but hid in the bathroom at work, thought of you as I visualized them calling my name. It was all for naught, I tell my friends. Secretly, of course, it was for you. Your brittle life redeemed by the marrow and bone, pulverized and ingested in secret magic concoctions, secret rituals, great revelations thrown up in silly rooms with people I never knew as well as you. I bear the cross that people will never understand, never letting go, making the life that we dreamed of in the dreadful 3 a.m.s when there were too many lines and too much chalk that was all so fleeting. I carry your beauty, your friendship, your combustible insanity with me, sat on couches bored trying to find that madness, but am cursed forever to a life of mundane drinks and civil discourse, dreaming of the past. I asked your mother if they ever got you a tombstone. I think of your brilliance, unmarked, given over to eternity and worms, forgotten. My life is defined by you looking forward, being better, not being swallowed by the same monsters that carried you away. You are with me in my dreams. After 10 years, I think of you every day. So anyway, that was very difficult for me to write, and it was a liberating process, and I think that as you know, that's the beauty of being a writer, is that we're able to take these things and exercise them through the written word. And I guess for me, a lot of times I find myself tackling these issues, and it's but at the same time, I don't think that, at other times I try to look at writing from a different perspective, and I think there's a room for taking different approaches. And this is a recent piece that I wrote. I wrote this last week, specifically dealing with the Houston summer, which I hate. It says, "Summer is a destructive force. The dank humidity leaves me brooding and exhausted. Houston is unforgiving. The cars, the cement, and teeming masses, coupled with my incessant ambition, leaves a trail of sweat, puts me in dark rooms huddled by the throbbing sounds of fans, hiding from the relentless assault of the sun. I dreamt last night of the snow from a failed conquest in Northern Virginia years ago. The result was the same, hiding, smothered, seeking refuge from icy February that left me longing for the comfort of home, the soft Houston late winter. I spent my life hiding from the world, looking for artificially temperature-controlled spaces. In the end, I spent all my time hiding from everything. Loud people with abrupt personalities, shining, bright swords, with abrasive opinions and sharp condemnation. The truth is that I'm a coward. None of it's for me. I am given over to fits of intuitive paranoia, deep sympathy for the outcast, feeling the deep burden of the guilt for failures, lost in a world of vapid people with sharp agendas packed away in pockets and purses. Summer is unbearable. The disappointment is too much to bear. There's never a point which I feel at peace with the universe. It is all slipping away as I clutch my confused life with sweaty hands, secretly afraid of skin cancer and the world getting hotter by the day. I am one of the ones who ache in rooms with small talks about politics, puffed up bravado about personal exploits. I want to sit in silence and breathe, feel the love and power of energy at the core of it all that is often so elusive. The world and all of it, the magic it possesses is fleeting. For the time being, I sit and wait for it all to pass. Eventually, the summer will end. The superficial people will go away. I will be able to soak in the beauty of life, find happiness not tarnished by the disappointment of the world. Everything will be okay. I just need to get through all of this heat. The world is a beautiful place. I just need to sit and ponder the future." So I tried to write a more lighthearted piece, and specifically talking, and one of the things that I hate is our dependence on technology, and it's just something that drives me crazy. And I'm constantly required to carry a telephone. So that was kind of the genesis of this piece. As a job requirement, I have to keep my phone on me at all times. Even as I slumber, my phone is in arm's length. Every night I go to sleep hoping the phone doesn't rouse me into action. It is an abomination. I am beholden to the incessant flow of notifications, updates, irrelevant text, and infernal headlines. It is overwhelming. I have daydreams of throwing my phone off of skyscrapers, cutting a hole in the ice of a frozen lake and dropping it into icy depth, or wrapping it in toilet paper and releasing it into the bowels of a porta potty. I have contemplated deconstructing my phone, taking it apart and carrying 1,000 little parts in a sandwich bag, periodically laying it out on the floor and making designs and spelling out my name from its delicate little pieces. When asked, I would say I was trying to get to the bottom of things, figure out how it worked, looking for some kind of breakthrough in communication. To be frankly, they would probably hand me another one and tell me to be more careful moving forward. After the third or fourth, they would probably fasten it to my neck or tether it to my testicles. There is no escaping it. In the future, I'm going to retire to a life of hand signals and telepathic communication. I will replace my television with fish tanks and my laptop with a vintage Underwood. Of course, I will exist on an island not receiving vital updates via social media on the mood status of people I never talked to but shared a homeroom class with in the 4th grade. And I will not be able to stay tuned into the latest celebrity gossip or fantasy football talk. Oh, the horror. I need to downgrade my life and find a magical community of those so predisposed to aversion for all of the digital bombardment. It probably doesn't exist, but my sense is that it's right around the corner. I am not alone. Again, in that piece, I can constantly go back to this idea of community. And I think it's so important because oftentimes writers write in isolation. And people will write and they don't have a good sense of how to communicate through social media, or they don't have a good mechanism for networking. And so I think it's so important for writers to pool their resources, and that's really been my mandate and what we really try to do with SD. But I just think that it's so important because writing can be a very solitary practice. This is another piece called Enlighten Song. The sky rumbles. The wet smell of calamity broods on the horizon. Domestic fires glow in fireplace. Meals are scraped into trash. Soothing waves of time lap at my naked feet. Reclined in chair, unaware of the great journey, unprepared to place soft heel on coarse ground and drudge into coiling madness, unnecessarily acquainted with discomfort and solitude. Ah, the righteous path. It comes quickly, fury and merciless tragedy thrust me into a great comedy of unexpected sadness, lost and silent, woefully unprepared for a world on new terms. I learned to live on nothing. Bitter flowers plucked and left under pillow, clay and dry bone extracted from a lie, the nectar of life that wets my lips, sours, a harsh vinegar churned with cold hands. Who are you now after being lost? A shrill voice of self-doubt wakes me from a great slumber. I place my ear to the ground and hear the vibrations of a life lost, years wasted. Words traded for shiny rocks and bits of paper. Meaningless. My soul is in the valley where I sit listening to the slow rotation of the earth, the everlasting song that only the enlightened hear. It beckons me. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that I have a copy here of Dustin's new book, which I will give to the first person that asked me for it. I ordered several copies. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I just got it yesterday. We're having an event on the 19th, and Dustin is going to be our main reader, and it's going to be where? Avant-Garde, and we have several bands playing. We have several people reading, and so I would just ask.
I know what it is. It's the Right About Now, right?
Is that what it is, Rich?
Say that again?
Right About Now?
No. It's at 411 Westheimer.
Okay.
It's a bar. It's
across from Numbers.
Like, because I know there's like a venue there that does YouTube videos and stuff that's called Right About Now.
That's right. Yeah.
But anyway, I invite everybody to come out and hear the readings, and anybody who wants to contact me, any writers or whatever, we'd love to. We would certainly love to make some inroads and meet people here locally. This next piece is, how much time do I got?
About 6 minutes.
Okay. Would I give up my life, my torment for a better life? Trade my constricted words for laughter at restaurants with jovial sorts with funny handshakes and anecdotes about country life? I could chemically alter the color of my walls and meet a charming girl with a big smile and a hearty laugh who will take down all my art, replace it with funny phrases painted on plaques made out of driftwood. She could lead me around by the thumb, put me in pastel shirts, and feed me to a congregation of hungry Mexican food-eating Presbyterians with good intentions. Maybe I could work up to being a people person and start watching the weather, get a favorite sports team, and have heated arguments with co-workers over draft picks. Could I sacrifice my darkness for happiness? I could let my doctor have his way, cleanse my mind, lose Thomas Wolfe, the eternal quest for home, the desire to walk among the downtrodden, handing in my bona fides for junk food culture, becoming acquainted with the recliner, let the troubles wash away. Turn from the wicked, press my face against institutional carpet. Let God's mercy pour over me as I bask in the glow of chemically manifested nothing. They're circling me with lab coats, wanting to squeeze all of the labored thought out of me. But what will I have left? I stand with darkness. And actually, the name of that piece is I Stand with Darkness. And I guess that's all about, it's for me, that was a piece where I was really, again, planting the flag and saying, this is who I am, and I'm not going to get any better. And I'm going to embrace who I am. And I think it's really important for us to embrace who we are and not allow ourselves to be changed or fixed. It's not going to get any better, and actually life is good. It doesn't sound that way from this. But it is what it is. In my next life, I want to write funny. Again, this is the same thing. In my next life, I want to write funny, happy stories of weekends that went off without a hitch. Photos of backslapping with funny haps and exotic drinks. I will have happy, quirky blog chronicling my life of leisure and success. I can't write those stories. It isn't my life. It isn't, and if it were, I wouldn't be able to write about it. My writing comes from the dark places of hunger and pain. I find words peeking out of the restroom in the middle of the night, face pressed against the cold, glossy door, gasping for air, fearful of shadows. There are no words to be captured in neatly set tables, leftovers, and urbane exchanges dumped in the trash. My words are born of starvation. I sat in front of the computer for 10 years in my marital home, patting my protruding belly, waiting for something profound to say, nothing. Blinking cursor on blank document. It is the pain that drives me, wakes me up in the middle of the night, send me into the bed with pen and paper to scribble out secret messages detailing stinging fear and loss. I waited on inspiration for a decade in a happy house, and had always managed to sneak out the side door gracefully. I discovered illicit secrets and explosions of ecstatic emotion that gave way to words falling out of my mouth, out of my mind, through my fingers into the world. And really, in that piece, I was reading all these travel blogs, and and I was reading these people, and they have these huge followings, and they write these travel blogs, and they talk about food, and they talk about all these things, and I'm just like, man, I just don't get it. I just can't be that person. And I was sitting there thinking about it. I was like, well, if I did lead that life, I wouldn't even take the time to write about it, because I wouldn't be convicted. I wouldn't have the emotion involved to want to take the time to chronicle it. So so anyway, that was the gist of that piece. But anyway, I would lastly, and I guess I didn't. This is my first time to read publicly since for a long time. But again, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity, and I am giving away a copy of Dustin's new book. And I would ask everybody to check out our blog, which is suddendunama.com. And we have several other associated blogs, but all of the writers have their own followings, and everybody pools their resources. And so instead of having this audience, we have this audience, because everybody pools together and shares and their work and everything else. And what it does is it creates a larger footprint to increase the amount of people who see your work. Because it's real important. It doesn't matter if it's kind of like if the tree falls in the woods and nobody's there to hear it, does it happen? So it's the process that matters, but also it's important that, if you spend so much passion getting your work out, then you want to, you want to find an audience. So anyway, pulling our resources was really important, and I want to thank Dustin and CZ and Zeke.
ZM. Yeah.
I'm
It's alright. It's cool.
Or whatever, and thank y'all for listening. And I apologize for any time it out just right. All right, thank y'all very much.
Yeah.